Welcome to On the Edge with April Mahoney Brains. Here, this is the spot where the conversations are pointed, the guests are sharp, and the responses are never dull. Did you bring your thinking caps? Because it's time to put them on. Because the conversation starts now. Welcome to On the Edge with April Mahoney Brains. It's me and Karen. We're at the spot, the place where the conversation is pointed, the guests are sharp, and the responses are never dull. She's down there in Australia, in Sydney, Brains. That's right. Let's send these people love and light because they are underwater. We want the waters to recede. We do. And it's just such a hot mess with everything else going on in the world. But me and Karen are going to try to be a good distraction. And we're going to talk about aging fearlessly. We're going to talk about her podcast. She also has a live event that they do storytelling. I'm a storyteller, not a liar, but a storyteller. So I understand the difference. We're going to have fun. And just really, what does it feel like to be a woman in this particular time, in this space, in this age? What does it feel like? What are her dreams? What are her aspirations? Because life isn't over. It's time for a new beginning. So let's welcome her to the edge. How are you, Karen? Ideas?
I am absolutely so thrilled to be here.
Oh, she's thrilled to be here, Brains. You hear that? I'm so happy to have you. Tell us a little bit about your story, your journey, and your truth.
So my name's Karen Sander, and I was born here in Australia in 1956. So I'm 66 coming up soon, April.
Wow.
And my first career was in teaching, and I did teach for quite a few years. Left the Department of Education and started tutoring young actors. I think you call it a studio teacher in the US, on film sets all over the world. 21 years ago, I went into pharmaceuticals, and I've done that for the last 21 years, and I've now retired. And over the last 6 years, I've spent time reinventing myself, ready for my retirement.
Well, it takes a lot to reinvent yourself because you got to have an idea of what you want. You can't just say, abracadabra. A new lipstick is not going to reinvent you. But it's a heart center kind of thing. It's a yearning. It's something that you have desired, something that you kept in your subconscious mind, and now you want to push it forward. What was your process in redesigning yourself, Karen?
Well, I ended up doing a course, and part of that course was writing a book. And I'd always wanted to write a book because when I was traveling in the film industry in Europe, it was letter time. There was no emails. And, you sit down and you write a letter, and I'd write a letter back every, once or twice a week. Like, example, the A to Z of Chinese toilets, because we were working in China, and that wasn't particularly fun using their toilets.
It wasn't, but I'm telling you, when I went to China, I went to, I stopped in Korea, and I went to Japan, and then I went to, we stopped here in Guam before we left. Everywhere the toilet was different. But you know what's the best, Brains? I'm going to tell you, if you have not sat on a bidet, you have not lived, baby. I love a bidet.
Well, believe me, China's toilets were nothing like a bidet.
Were you in the ones that had those holes that you squat over the hole?
Oh, it's a trough that you squat over.
This wasn't a trough. This one wasn't a trough. This one was like really like a cement slab, and there was a hole, and you just squatted over the hole.
It was a hole, but it was like a long rectangular trough. Just imagine me, braless, in a one-piece jumpsuit, stripping down and squatting over a toilet, and all these Chinese women come in. Just close your eyes because it's not a pretty sight. Anyway, so my mum always said to me, you've got to write a book one day. So I did this course, and I started writing a book, and it came out, Aging Fearlessly. So it wasn't a novel. I don't want to be a novelist, but I really did want to write a book that was, something to help women of my age.
Let me see it. You put it up too quick. Put it up. My brains want to see it. Yes, look at that. Aging. You see how she spells aging, Brains? Is AGEING. Fearlessly for women. Don't be defined by a number. I heard that.
And look, I had great pleasure writing it. And in 1 year, I wrote it, published it, etc. And Things just took off. That was the start of me reinventing myself.
So you looked at yourself in the mirror and you said, okay, I want to write a book.
Yep.
But you also have that other skill set of characterization. Is that characterization?
Characterization.
Exactly. And so what you've been able to do is take that acting and pour that into people with these live events, and you were a storyteller. You had a lot in you.
Yeah, so I started doing a bit of, through my elocution teacher when I was 5, she found out I'd written a book and she said, I want you to come and interview people on my community TV program called Joy's World, which I did. A year later, she asked me to run the whole thing for her because she was, in her late 80s. So I did that with my own community TV, Aging Fearlessly, which eventually I moved into radio and then my podcast.
Tell us a little bit about your podcast. Who do you feature? What do you talk about?
Well, I've now got 107 episodes as of this coming Monday.
Bravo.
It's a lot of work. It's about 10 hours to do a good podcast. I do it at a radio station or on Zoom, depending where my guests are. I have many celebrities from Australia who've been on my podcast, authors, billionaires, businessmen, etc. However, I like interviewing people from the community. They have great stories. And so I find different people. Example, yesterday we were interviewing about emotional assertiveness and not carrying, another interview about not carrying your emotional, baggage through generations. And so all my interviews are different, sometimes about color. How does color work to make you look younger, feel better, style, and other times about writing books or whatever the topic, doesn't matter.
You are a teacher and an educator.
Yes.
Aren't you glad you're not doing that now? It's a rough job.
I am, and I suffered a lot of anxiety through those times. And I do admit this, I very openly, April, I suffered from generalized anxiety disorder. And, it's very hard to function properly. And I've worked through a lot of that, sometimes with medication because it's the way to go. Other times I get through it by just clean living, breathing, moving, whatever. It's what works for you is the thing that's important. And I think it's important to open up and talk about it, because when it's in the closet, other people who have the same issue, they don't see that people are getting through it and surviving, and they bottle it up. And it's not a good thing to have.
Well, and then they don't want to attach the stigma of those words, those 2 words, mental health. It is your mental health. Brains, every day you go through a mental health episode. It's highs, it's lows. What we need to try to do as individuals is learn to stabilize.
Absolutely.
And if that takes medication, as long as you regulate it, don't take a couple of them and have a couple drinks and then take a couple more. That's called addiction.
I think it's as long as you don't self-medicate. That's what it comes down to.
You know what? Sometimes you got to get the edge off. You got to get the edge off. And I'm not justifying it. I'm just keeping it real. Because life can hand you it can deal you a bad hand sometime.
Life can deliver you lemons, but you've got to make lemonade, and I prefer lemonade to lemons. And so, I've just gone from strength to strength over the years, creating now. On top of my podcast, I fell in love with a storytelling event, and I invented my own. And I do it here on the northern beaches of Sydney, and it's become super popular.
Well, tell me a little bit about it. Take us there.
I have 6 storytellers, 3 men, 3 women on a stage who tell a story on a theme. So, example, if life gives you lemons, I have them on the stage. They tell a story that's from their life about life giving them lemons. And sometimes it's a comedian who really sends it up. Other times it could be a musician doing it through song, or someone doing it through poetry. And you know what, April, what I'm so amazed at is that how the audience has responded, but not only the audience, it's the guests who are on the stage telling the story who come back and say how it was for them. One fellow, a rabbi, said to me, Karen, I grew as a person last night, not only storytelling, but listening to the other stories. The same night that he was on was a transgender woman telling her story. So other people have just said it gave me my mojo back. I was lost, and telling my story helped me find myself again. And it brings tears to my eyes, because I'm giving them a space to find themselves, and the audience to learn and connect, the community to connect.
A safe space.
A
non-judgmental space.
Yeah, where people applaud what they're doing. People are grateful for what they're doing. They are, they come there and they go, wow, that makes me feel human.
So what do you do that? You do that every week? Bi-weekly?
I do it once a month. So here in Sydney, I do it the first Tuesday of the month, and we've just had a go. We're starting to do it in Newcastle, April, which is 2 hours drive north of here. There's a woman who said, let's do it up here. And now other councils are reaching out to me and asking, can I run a one-off event for them? Or, because everybody is realizing the importance of storytelling. And how
they should know that down there with the Aborigines, that's how they record history, is through storytelling,
Well, my first ever storyteller on a stage was a woman from the Torres Strait Islands who told a story about fishing and her family. So she opened the show as an Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander woman. She opened my event for me in 2020, just before COVID started. And her story is priceless. And those stories when you have 100 people in a room and you cannot hear a pin drop.
Right.
And at the end of it, everyone goes, wow.
Right. Right. But again, that's like the elevator rising, or the cream rising to the top. Absolutely. So I'm so glad that you do that. What do you do for fun and recreation, Karen, outside of that? Do you bowl? Do you go fishing? What do you do?
I am an ocean swimmer. My partner and I swim. If you ever have been to Australia, most people know Manly, and there's a fantastic bay across there that we ocean swim.
I've been to Manly.
Later on this year, I'm doing a swim trek around Crete in Greece. We swim along the coast. We do a daily swim of about 5 kilometers. And I love the ocean because it's like meditation. When you're swimming in the ocean, even though you're actively doing something, you're really meditating. It's like active meditation. And there's not a swimmer gets out of the water where we swim, and there's hundreds of them every day, who doesn't walk up that ramp without a smile on their face.
Well, I'm glad that they're renewed, because the closest I get to some water is a hot tub. No, I got caught in a riptide a couple times. Yeah, and I was not a strong enough swimmer to swim with the current. I fought it, and down I went, and up I came, and down I went. I was through. It is very frightening. You have no control, and you get that water up in your nose and your head and all that kind of stuff. So when you swim in the ocean, have you ever had an experience of fear, or get next to a dolphin or a great white, anything like that? Anything crazy?
I do have a fear of great whites. We see sharks, but not ones that are going to eat you. And it's fascinating watching. We see giant cuttlefish. We see all sorts of magnificent fish out there in the water. I'll send you a photo sometime.
Yeah. I've got and do you scuba dive too, or you just kind of swim on the surface?
No,
really?
Just swimming. Yeah, just swimming. Sometimes we swim most days it's 1.5 Ks, sometimes 3 Ks, sometimes a few more. It doesn't. But I think what you said about the rip, we often get caught in rips, but you can go with it. You can go across it. It will eventually stop. And if you're a strong enough swimmer, you just let it,
Right.
You just work out how to get across.
Honey, I wasn't a strong enough swimmer, and the water won. So I don't need to do that. I know when I go on a cruise ship or whatever, I'm always with Mr. Magnificent, who was in the Navy. So I say, okay, baby, where's the life jacket? How you let this boat down? What is the situation here? But
Yeah.
there's so much under the sea. I have friends that are scuba divers, and they say that that ocean just transforms you. And it's something about the salt water that cleanses your soul.
Well, that's the negative ions, and that's what I said
That's right.
about being in the water and you come out feeling calm. You come out feeling rejuvenated. It's
Mhm.
almost like you've resurrected yourself and you can start again.
Wow. So do you have children, Karen?
No, I don't have children. I have two nieces and four great nieces. We're a family that only breeds girls. I don't know how, but there's all these women. I have a wonderful partner, but no, I never married and I never had children. I was a teacher though.
Yeah, well, you were a mother to many. Right. Seriously, there's nothing like a teacher. I tell people all the time. I saw my second grade teacher about 4 years ago, Karen,
Mm.
and I cried like a baby.
Oh,
Her name was Miss DeRoche, and she remembered me. I'm
oh,
almost 60 years old, and she remembered me. She says, April. And her voice inflection didn't change. She had on that same perfume. And when I used to get a hug from her, she was just as soft as a marshmallow. And she was still soft as a marshmallow. But there was
oh,
something about pleasing your teacher, not your parent, not your peers, but someone that actually poured into you and educated you on something. And you
yeah.
were able to reciprocate and say, hey, you know what? I got it. And I got an A, and you're proud of me. What are
Yeah.
some of your crowning moments? Would be some things that you would share with teachers right now that are struggling because they got a hard time, especially here in the U.S. They're either they're a bulletproof shield or they're the mass monitor. They don't have time to show the compassion that teachers once did. What would be your
I think,
encouragement?
well, I think the thing is that you always have to listen to children. And well, actually, I have to say this, April, and maybe you will understand this for sure. But since I've been podcasting and radioing, I've learned many skills, better listening skills. And I think as a teacher, quite often you're busy and you forget to listen, and you forget to listen to both sides of things. And you also forget to ask kids, what is it that's going on? Are they afraid? And this also came from the interview I was doing yesterday. Are you afraid? Are you fearful? Are you sad? What is it that's going on at the time? Because they're the things that we need to understand about the kids. And often if you can get to the bottom of that and talk to them, you can change a situation.
You can change the situation while they're there with you, but then when they go home, it still could be some dysfunction.
Yeah,
Alcoholism, they're not eating, they're sleeping
yeah.
in the car. So that's hard too. But as long as you can love them and show them that, there is something that's stable, if it's the 4 or 5 hours with you, that will definitely make a difference. What do
And
you
we
want your, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Can I just say one other thing? I think it's also understanding that the way we actually learn, and not all of us are good at mathematics, but we might have this amazing skill in art or music, and they're the ones you have to foster them in. And because every one of us has our genius
Right.
inside. And I think it's knowing and understanding what each child's genius is. And if you can help them find the genius that they can then build more self-esteem.
Right.
That's what's important.
Yeah. It's a locomotive with no coal.
Yeah.
The steam is hard to find. I want to go back to the book for a minute. What is inside of the pages of that book?
Well, if I opened it up, maybe there's a penthouse pet. No.
I'm not mad at you, girl. Go on. You can be a sex kitten. That's right. Ain't nothing wrong with it.
No, well, I talk about facing your future in one section of the book. And
Karen, will you grace us with a small excerpt of your book? I want to hear what it's like to age fearlessly.
well, this is something that it's only from the introduction, but it's an exercise that I think is really helpful to describe yourself in words. How would you describe yourself in words? Not an age. So I'm 66, but how would I describe myself? If you said to me, how old are you? I'm 66, but this is what you would say. I am old enough to have learned from my mistakes, and I'm happy to admit them. Realize that I will make many more along my journey through life, and understand that what I see through my eyes is not the same as what others see, that the window we look through is clouded by our personal experiences. I have learned to listen, and through listening, I have learned more than through speaking. I am wise enough to know to shut my mouth unless I know what I'm talking about. That relationships between two people are never what they appear to be on the outside, and never to take sides, as there is always two versions. Not to interrupt an angry person who is on a rant. Listening helps dissipate anger. I'm young enough to have the desire to challenge myself to perform new and interesting physical feats that sometimes make my body hurt, but also make me stronger in the end. And I'm comfortable enough to, and this is the important bit, to like the person I have become, and to acknowledge that the events in my life have prepared and shaped me for a purpose. To realise that no one is above or below me in status in this world, and to be aware that in my youth I doubted myself and I was a follower, not trusting that I was capable to lead, that I just lacked confidence. Today, I am hungrier than ever for knowledge and more capable of absorbing the lessons I've learned. I am of an age when I realise there is a stronger power that guides us, but I am yet to discover what it is.
That's one hell of a definition. And everybody's not going to get to that sense of awareness. It's not that you can't get to that point in your life and you've been through the trials and tribulations, but it's being aware, and conscious, and applying that knowledge.
Yeah, and I think we all have to keep learning. Like, you would understand the words lifelong learning. This journey goes on. Since I wrote the book, I've learned so much more. And I hope that the day that I go wherever, I don't know where we're going.
I know where I'm going now. Where you going, I don't know. I'm not going under the sea, I know that.
Well, I hope that I've learned a lot of lessons, that I hope I'm able to impart some of those lessons to other people.
What do you want your legacy to be, Karen? How do you want to be remembered?
I'd like people to think that I really gave it my all, that I really lived a long life that was full of joy and that gave other people joy.
You want to be a joyful giver.
I like through my events that if they can give back to someone, that's really important to me. It's become a real pivotal. It was a pivotal point starting Story Room, where I became much more community minded.
Right. And it's so important to be a part of a community, to be a part of a tribe. People have separated themselves from community, from getting together. Well, isolation with COVID. But with that isolation of COVID, what did you learn about yourself?
It's good to spend alone time. And I learned that what makes me happiest is people, and being alone and not being able to share life with people is really, really hard. And I missed people. I was fortunate, April, that the gentleman that I'm now with, my partner, has a motorhome. So we spent 17 weeks of last year in a motorhome, the two of us, and we did 9,500 kilometres. Wow. And we were in an area where we weren't as isolated at home as other people. So, and one of the isolations, I also spent 5 weeks with my mother, who was 93 at the time. So I looked after her, and I podcast from the back room, and I worked, and it was just such a wonderful gift to spend 5 weeks straight with my mother, because I'd not done that since I was 17.
Oh, wow. There was an experience there. I know I took care of my mother. She passed in a couple of weeks. It'll be a year, and I can't believe where the time was going. But I tell you, her spirit is with me more so, I believe now in the metaphysical energy realm that it was in her dying days, because I hear her, I laugh, I giggle, I feel her embrace. So I do believe that there is something after this. I don't believe that this is the final chapter of the book, not at all. And
Yeah.
and Karen, you've been so giving, in everything that you've done, from educating teachers to allowing, people in the community to have a voice, to understand, to get away from this false narrative of what they assume or think people are, but then also to document that and encourage women of a particular age to continue to live your life fearlessly. Tell my brains how to get in contact with you and how to purchase a copy of the book.
Well, my book will be on Amazon again shortly, within a week or so. We're just working on a final new copy. And remembering it's aging with an E, that's the English and the Australian way, and I think the Canadian way to spend it. But my website is www.karen, Karen, Sander, SANDER.com. And actually, all my podcasts are there, and about my Story Room event, and my book is there as well. But I have to thank you, April, because you are inspiring, and it has been wonderful that you reached out to speak to me, and I do appreciate it. If ever I can return the favor, come on my podcast.
I will come on your podcast, and I will read some of my poetry, because I'm a poet. I've written 3 books and sold over 22,000 copies. Yes.
Well, I believe actually on Facebook you're friends with a friend of mine who is a very, very well-known poet who just did a TED Talk.
Really? Well, we'll have to talk about who that person is and get him on the show.
Really?
And so it's so important to have a voice, brains, however you express that, as long as it's constructive. It could be in art, it could be in music, it could be in poetry, storytelling, writing books, just being a kind, compassionate person with a tender ear. And you have been all that and then some, Karen Sanders. Thank you so much for being here on the edge with me and my brains. Brains, you know what to do right now. I need you to go and subscribe, okay? To YouTube, to LinkedIn. Where else am I at? Facebook. I'm all over the planet. I want you to listen to the podcast. I want you to listen to Karen's podcast. She's a great interviewer. I listened to your show. Oh, yes. Don't think I didn't hear it. Okay. Maybe do you have a YouTube channel?
I'm about to start one, yes.
That would be great to see some of your live productions with people telling their story. I think that would be very inspirational, because we need something outside of this mainstream media mayhem. And this is where you find it, brains, right here on the edge. So go love, like, and share. What do you need to do? Love, like, and share. Thank you so much, Karen. Come on back and see me again real soon, and we're going to get that book circulating. People, get a copy. It's a great read. I'll talk to you soon.